Production of Broad and High is funded in part by the Greater Columbus Arts Council, celebrating expression, fostering talent, and connecting the community to Columbus artists, performances, exhibitions, concerts, public art, and more at columbusmakesart.com. From these contributing sponsors and viewers like you, thank you.
This time on Broad and High, we are welcomed into a community who is creating connections through dance. Meet the owner of the Troll Hole Museum, which holds the Guinness World Record for the largest number of trolls. Experience the work of an artist who strives to heal the wounds of racism and segregation. And hear the new sounds of a local band that also has a new name. This and more right now on Broad and High. Welcome to Broad and High. I'm your host, Kate Quickle. You've probably heard of Latin dances such as salsa, mambo, and maybe even merengue. But have you heard of Zouk? It's a Brazilian dance that has a community right here in Columbus. We met up with some of its members to learn more about this movement that dates back just a few decades.
There's a feeling that you get when you just connect with someone on the dance floor. Meeting a dance connection, it sounds romantic, but it's nothing like that at all. It's just meeting someone that you both vibe to the same music, you have the same kind of style, and you just understand each other.
Brazilian Zouk is a partner dance that originated from lambada.
And that was actually called the forbidden dance. And so it was very taboo to do. And when they started to hear Caribbean Zouk music, lambada kind of mixed with Caribbean Zouk in order to make what we know as Brazilian Zouk today.
It's a very smooth, flowy dance that's a lot of fun. I discovered several years ago that Columbus had quite the Latin dance scene. When you get introduced to Latin dancing, a lot of people know what salsa is, and some people know what bachata is, and then there's these other really beautiful dances as well. And Brazilian Zouk is one of those dances, and as soon as I started trying that, I knew this is the one for me. This matches my style, my personality, and it's so much fun that it was contagious.
At the time, Sean had just become an instructor, and I knew him previously, and so he invited me to come out. So I brought my best friend, and we tried it and absolutely fell in love. And so he and I immediately just went straight into it, and we dove in, and now we're both actually instructors for Columbus Zouk.
One of the beautiful things about it is people dance for different reasons. There's some people who love the music. There's some people who it's their social outlet. But the reality is it really doesn't matter what your reason is. There's lots of fun reasons to go.
Columbus Zouk is really special because it's not just a company where Sean and I teach you how to dance Brazilian Zouk. It's actually more about the people who it's made up of, the community that comes together, and we've worked really hard to cultivate a place where people feel accepted and welcomed and safe to dance this and to do what they love and to follow their passions and to continue to just grow and learn no matter what age you are, what background you have, or how good of a dancer you are. And that's really special because I feel like that's hard to find.
The way that the teachers do the lessons, you don't need a partner, you show up and they'll teach you some basics, and then you'll be partnered with a random person, and then they'll rotate partners around. And that's the basic style of lesson, typically a circle of leads and a circle of follows, and you rotate around. So you get to meet all these wonderful people, people of all ages, people with all sorts of backgrounds, people who are married, single, retired people who are looking for things to do. So you don't need to have a partner going in. You're gonna get comfortable, you're gonna build your confidence, and then by the time almost all the lessons end with a social, you'll feel really confident, ready to go, trying some of the basic steps.
I actually was pretty fearful myself of putting myself out there. Like, dancing with a partner that you don't know, that sounds really scary. But the community that we have, everyone is just so kind and accepting, and we make sure everyone is comfortable the entire time.
Zouk dancers across the world, you know, we're not as much all about the fast salsa, but it's about the connection. And I think the thing that appeals to me about Zouk, and I think would appeal to a lot of people, is it gives us a moment to slow down and connect with our dance partner, whether we're beginners, intermediates, or advanced. And every dance is a new adventure. There's something really beautiful that happens when you dance Zouk. It's like that feeling when you feel so engrossed in music, when the music just moves you. You feel connected to the music, you feel connected to your partner, and you feel connected to yourself, just comfortable in your own skin. When you get those three things coming together at once, it creates this almost like a high. It's like runner's high, but with way less work. And it's something that's hard to describe, but I want everyone to experience the joy that a well-connected dance can bring.
When we are bringing in special guests, which we do a few different times a year, we look for people who are not only amazing dancers, but really great people. Like people who are also focused on like building a community and really connecting with people, because Zouk is amazing and good for dancing, but it's really about the relationships that you make. So one thing that's really cool about Columbus Zouk is we just love it so much that we want to share it with everyone and make it as accessible as possible, both emotionally and financially. So in the summer when it's nice out, we go by the Scioto Mile and we do Zouk by the river. So we teach a lesson, people come to dance for like an hour after that, and it's really just a fun way for people to connect, spend some time outside, learn some dancing, and it's just a donation-based event, so you don't have to worry about anything like that. Come, enjoy, and just be a part of the community.
I think about so many adults, we isolate ourselves. We've got our friend group that we've established, and we have our routines that we're well into. We don't often try new things, we don't often learn new skills, and we don't often step out of our comfort zone. And trying dance, whether it's just for fun with some friends, or whether it's something you want to learn to actually, like, I want to learn this new skill to get good at, or you just want to meet some new people. It was one of the best decisions, one of the best things that happened to me in my later 20s. And I think it's something that would interest a lot of people.
To learn more, find them on social media at Columbus Zouk. Trolls have delighted us for generations, and in the small town of Alliance, Ohio, they have a museum of their own. Collector Sherry Groom opened the Troll Hole to establish a home for her collection, which continues to grow. Let's step inside for a look around.
When you collect trolls, it's like, why trolls? And all the people I pooled and myself, it's something about the eyes and something about the hair. Me personally, I believe it goes much deeper, that troll dolls represent some universal concepts of kindness, goodness, and cooperation.
The majority of them are made, with their hands out, like they're hugging. That's a kind of a pretty positive message to put out there, especially with a lot of toys, a lot of different messages going out. But the trolls are all about happiness and loving one another.
In the 1950s, a fellow in Denmark, he was a wood handyman, and he crafted this iconic image of a troll doll. So this iconic image went viral. So these iconic dolls, copied in many different variations with more pointed ears. They have certain characteristics you can recognize them by. They have 4 fingers, 4 toes. They have, of course, the big ears and big noses. And the original ones had tails, which I don't have one here, because those were really expensive and I'm too cheap to buy the really expensive and rare ones. When I started this project, I'd managed to amass about 2,000 trolls. And that was because I had a significant other, and he went out and started buying collections of trolls, 300 or 400 at a time. So that's why the numbers jumped. Now I've amassed over 40,000 pieces, trolls, troll dolls, and troll memorabilia. And the interesting phenomenon is that they continue to roll in on a fairly regular basis of donations. The lady in Spain likes to make her own custom trolls. She did the tiniest ones, like less than ½ an inch. A lot of folk artists go out and get natural materials, pine cones. There's pine cone trolls, wooden trolls, wax trolls, and then the Smoky Mountain trolls were created by Ken Arnsbach. He immigrated here with his family. He settled in the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee, went out in the woods, took a piece of wood and sisal, which is rope, and created these folk art trolls with big noses, long tails. Well, my favorite troll was one of the, what I call primo trolls, one of the Dom trolls, but it's the bigger size. So that was my first troll that I got that was the more rare and unusual and made in Europe.
What I grew up and what I got into was the battle trolls. The ones that are kind of like a combination of a G.I. Joe, like a troll, and maybe a turtle. All right, so y'all ready to move on to this next room?
Yeah.
All right.
Awesome. Very nostalgic in some ways. Very cool. So many different varieties and different setups, and a lot of the like dioramas and stuff upstairs are cool to look at and see the different pieces too.
I like the fact that a lot of them are from like my era when I was younger, and that was cool to see.
We discovered historic East Main Street in Alliance, Ohio is the cheapest commercial real estate. So we were entrepreneurs and going to do something with that, and we thought an art district. We did a lot of research, and you need a hook. And a Guinness record is a good hook. And my husband had the bright idea to say, wow, you have enough troll dolls, we could get a Guinness record for the troll dolls, and from there we'd have our hook. So we started with the Troll Museum, then we did Wisecrack's Comedy Escape Room, Mad Dog's Crazy Cat Cafe, where you pay to play with cats in a unique environment. And then in the last years, we've launched Stick, Stones, Bones, and Magic, a metaphysical shop. And then we had 2 event centers. And so people come to visit quirky, unusual things. And that's how the trolls kind of took over. Part of the tourism is the Football Hall of Fame and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So we created our own Troll Hall of Fame with our Wall of Fame of custom troll dolls and a reconstruction of the Benson Stadium. But we have a bunch of custom troll dolls, as well as the franchised teams all had troll dolls. That was one of the big sellers in the 90s, was get a troll doll with your team spirit on it. And then the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, where we have Dolly Parton, who was just inducted. And at some point we're trying to get Justin Timberlake and maybe Jimmy Fallon, because they're 2 good friends that laugh and joke, and have Jimmy Fallon present Justin Timberlake our induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So my background was mental health nursing, but I always knew that enjoyment and laughter is the best therapy. And so it's very enjoyable to work here and share my passion with the people, and it inspires them to then go out and be creative and do things outside the box. You don't have to be mainstream. A lot of people get into thinking they have to do something mainstream, and trolls are certainly not very mainstream.
To learn more, visit thetrollhole.com. Next, we travel to Florida to hear from artist Dean Mitchell. Whether it be a landscape, still life, or figurative work, when he paints, Dean draws from the challenging experiences of his youth and examines the world we live in. Let's take a look.
When I was a kid, I experienced racism very early on, and it's an irony that I used to pray if I could do anything with my work, it would help us heal those wounds of racism and segregation. A lot of these things have shaped my sensibility about what I do. So a lot of it is not just because I think it's interesting in terms of light and this and that and shadow, which does interest me. But the main overture of about the work is about poverty and the marginalization of people and how those spaces affect our whole sense of self in a space. That's been just a part of who I am. This art thing, however you want to describe it, is a huge part of my life. And so I want it to mean something. If I can change the world in any way, it would be to help break down certain social constructs that I think are detrimental to us as human beings, and there are plenty of them.
My name is Matt Cutter. I'm with Cutter & Cutter Fine Art in St. Augustine, Florida, and I'm also a painter. We've got a good track record over 10 years of selling hundreds of paintings from Dean. So I think he's a very strong, worthy artist, and I do think he stops people in their tracks, and it's very contemplative. He's not grabbing you with the brightest color. He's not grabbing you with bells and whistles. He's grabbing you in a different way. He's asking you to come in very slowly, examine what's going on, feel that nuance, and that's what he brings to the table. So if you're 30 feet away, you would say that's realism, and it is. It conveys that emotion. When you look really closely at how he's laid down the watercolor layers, there's a lot of abstraction, there's a lot going on with the design. What he does, he plays with the dark and light, and everything, in my opinion, with Dean's work is keyed in on a strong design that sets up everything for the painting.
Dean Mitchell is beyond that of a master. If you had one where you say, well, this is the apprentice and this is a master, well, the apprentice learns how to do a this or that, and then once they're able to demonstrate that, then they say, oh, okay, now you're a master. Dean Mitchell is an enigma. Dean Mitchell was born to do what he does. When I look at Dean Mitchell's work, I do see science, I do see philosophy, I do see religion, because some of those pieces, like Rowena, when you see that particular piece, that is a religious piece, that is an icon, that is an actual Mary that you say, oh my God, she speaks of humanity. Where in the world would someone painting like Andrew Wyeth, and in some cases better than Andrew Wyeth, come from? And therein, I think, lies the spiritual quality. Because if you look at Dean's background, Dean achieved not because of, but in spite of. In spite of is when God takes place. Therein lies the miracle.
I was raised by my grandmother from 11 months old. And so I was sort of a highly active child. And so I would often walk to town with her, because I grew up in the Panhandle of Florida in a little town called Quincy. And I had no idea of the kind of wealth that was in Quincy, because we basically stayed in the black community. A lot of us, when we first got our first bikes, we would ride over in the area and we would see these huge mansions. And so I began to look at the wealth discrepancy. And I said, how could somebody have a house that big? Really didn't really understand it. But I think through the years, as you become more educated, more socialized, you begin to recognize how you fit into the social structure or the social order of things. And then when Martin Luther King started emerging on the scene, we would watch him on television. So a lot of these things have shaped my sensibility about what I do, because I do a lot of things. A lot of the environments that I do are a window into poverty and a window into that psychological space in which I emerged out of. As teacher Tom Harris, there was 4 of us who were really interested in art, and he introduced us to local art competitions. And so we were often the only black people at these shows with Mr. Harris and his wife, who were Caucasian.
I called it a crucible of competition, which can be good or bad because it puts pressure on kids. He was even as focused then as he is now, but there were so many negatives. A lot of it was the black-white thing. He paints what he wants to paint because he feels the need in here to make a visual statement about what's going on. And that's the strength of Dean Mitchell's painting. Half of his focus and intensity is based on, this is what I'm doing is extremely important, and it's never been done before. And whenever or however, whatever the recognition is, I have to do it my way, which to me is almost a definition of what art is and what art's supposed to be.
I will be gone at some point, but what I leave, will it really make the world better in some ways and make us examine our own human behavior toward one another?
He didn't paint to sell. Okay, that sounds ridiculous, because he had to make a living. He painted because it's something he had to do and something he had to say.
He wants people to examine this work on a deep level. So I do think he's very important now, and I think his work will be very important 100 years from now.
I think art has a way of mirroring back to us what we become. And it also provides us history in which we can reflect back on to not keep repeating the same mistakes. It's that kind of troubling world that feeds my passion to try to figure out how to derail some of the destructive behavior.
See more of his work at deanmitchellstudio.com. Songwriter and musician Alex Musawir describes his band Healing in Peace as primarily a recording project with a rotating cast of members and collaborators. They record songs at home using a 4-track cassette tape machine. We hosted them for a recent Broad and High Presents session and retreated to some of their latest releases. Take a listen.
Was a mirage, a sick mirage, a parody, and sinking deeper into the depths of it, face down into a hole, I spent years digging. All right. Painting over of ideas, never satisfied. But truth is not a cart that drags behind you. Truth is not a cart that drags behind you. Not something far off in the rear view. Truth is not a cart that drags behind you, behind you, behind you.
To hear more, check them out at healingandpeace.bandcamp.com. Well, that's our show. Remember, you can find all of our stories online at WOSU.org as well as on our YouTube channel. For all of us here at WOSU, I'm Kate Quickle. Thanks for watching.
To bed, but first I need fed. I need milk and water. I need meat and bread, flowers and a vase for them. Driving to the gig, filthy, I'm a pig. In opposition to the audience, hurling insults at the stage, I wave at every one of them. I'm the mezzanine man, in need of constant attention.
Production of Broad and High is funded in part by the Greater Columbus Arts Council, celebrating expression, fostering talent, and connecting the community to Columbus artists, performances, exhibitions, concerts, public art, and more at columbusmakesart.com.